Welcome to week 2. We're going to be discussing depressants this week. So the first type of depressant we're going to talk about are sedative hypnotics. So these are central nervous system depressants. There are 3 types that we're going to go into. They're all synthetic psychoactive drugs, meaning they are man-made and not found in nature. They inhibit neurotransmission, so this means they have decreased the likelihood of an action potential, meaning the neurons won't be passing messages along to each other. The first type we're going to discuss of sedative hypnotics are barbiturates. So in low doses, they can relieve tension, anxiety, convulsions, and high blood pressure. Currently, the only reason that they would be prescribed is to induce a medical coma or to prevent epileptic seizures. Barbital was the first barbiturate created. It was in 1903. Other barbiturates would be something maybe called the truth serum, so it would cause people to relax and perhaps share information they weren't willing to share without the medication. And people can experience euphoria for those it's not prescribed to. So in intoxication, somebody might look like they have a deficit in attention, memory, judgment, cognitive ability, psychomotor skills, and emotional disorders. They might have glazed eyes, dry skin, rapid breathing and pulse, high blood pressure, cramps, nausea, tremors, and convulsions. And in high doses, it's similar to alcohol intoxication, and that's why it can be very dangerous to drive a car while intoxicated on barbiturates. It can impair your judgment, loss of coordination, slurred speech, decreased respiration, impaired short-term memory, all of which would make driving very dangerous. When mixed with alcohol, death by respiratory depression or cardiovascular depression can occur because you're mixing 2 depressants together, and it increases the effect of both because they're together. So if somebody is overdosing on a barbiturate, then must seek medical attention as soon as possible. Physical and psychological dependence is common with barbiturates. That's why it's not prescribed very often, and withdrawal to this can be life-threatening. So if you stop a barbiturate cold turkey, so without tapering off, it can be very dangerous. So it needs to be medically supervised to taper slowly, and may need to be supplemented with another barbiturate to help with symptoms in order to taper off. Non-sedative or non-barbiturate sedative hypnotics. This was an attempt to create the same type of drug, but safer and non-addicting. Unfortunately, that was not the case. They inhibit GABA in the central nervous system, but also have a physical dependency, tolerance, withdrawal, and overdose similar to barbiturates. So they were not successful. It impacts sleep. So there's no REM sleep, which is your restful sleep, and this can actually cause psychotic symptoms. So somebody who doesn't have a good night's sleep and doesn't have a REM sleep, they can produce psychotic symptoms. After long-term use, symptoms can continue even after the medication is stopped because it accumulates in the body. After long-term use, symptoms, high degrees of cross-tolerance between those drugs, alcohol and barbiturates. So if you are addicted to these types of drugs, you probably would have a same kind of tolerance to alcohol. So it would take a significant amount of alcohol to have the impact, because you've already need a lot of the other drug to have an impact. Withdrawal symptoms need to be medically monitored, just as the other one, and the same types of symptoms. Benzodiazepines were introduced to replace barbiturates and non-barbiturate sedative hypnotics in the treatment of anxiety and insomnia. So these are safer. It's pretty rare where somebody might die of an overdose, but it is still possible, especially if it's mixed with other depressants like alcohol. So somebody who takes a benzodiazepine and alcohol can die of an overdose. Some short-term effects. So it calms hyperactivity, tension and agitation, relaxes muscles and relieves anxiety. Combat withdrawal effects of other depressant drugs, so alcohol. So somebody might be prescribed a benzodiazepine to somebody who is trying to stop drinking and is struggling with the withdrawal effects. It impairs muscle coordination, produces dizziness, low blood pressure, and fainting, and inhibiting short-term memory. So with excessive use of benzodiazepines, you can have drowsiness, lethargy, disorientation, confusion. Can also produce a paradoxical effect. So paradoxical is the opposite effect than what's expected. So it could also, benzodiazepines can cause agitation, insomnia, and aggression, which is opposite of what you would expect. In seniors, it can cause an Alzheimer's or other dementia diagnosis that is not true. So it looks like somebody who's taking too many benzodiazepines, it could look like Alzheimer's or dementia, which is not, in fact, the case. So chronic use, there can develop a physical and psychological dependence. So that would include withdrawal symptoms. And these are similar to other sedative hypnotics. The reaction depends on the dose levels, so it can range from anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, irritability to severe, similar to delirium and convulsions. Dependency can begin within 4 weeks at therapeutic doses, so even if somebody is taking it as prescribed by a doctor, the dependency on the medication can start within 4 weeks. So other benzodiazepines, so one in particular, Rohypnol, it's also called roofies, or the date rape drug, which is one of the types of date rape drugs. Rohypnol is not legal in Canada. It's more likely alcohol and other illegal benzodiazepines have been used in sexual assaults in Canada, but Rohypnol is classified as a benzodiazepine. So moving out of those and into another type of depressants is an antihistamine. So it's really for an anti-allergy medications. It blocks the allergens from the receptor, therefore not producing the symptoms, so like rashes or itching. So if you've ever had an allergic reaction and you take a Benadryl, for example, the rashes and itching would go away because it's blocking the receptor from having that to happen. So common effects at therapeutic dose. So even though you're taking it properly, you can still feel drowsy, dizzy, lethargy, mood enhancement, gastrointestinal discomfort, so you can have stomach aches from taking these, and appetite suppression. At higher doses, it might enhance mood. You might also hallucinate, especially if you mix it with alcohol, because it is another depressant. Tolerance also develops with regular use, so you can become physically and psychologically dependent on antihistamines. So moving into inhalant solvents and anesthetic gases. So inhalants are volatile gases, refrigerants, solvents, general anesthetics, and propellants. So misusing these types of substances are called volatile substance abuse. So these are things that you can find, some of them you can find in your home, in your hardware store, so they're pretty easy to access. That's why it's usually the first type of drug that an adolescent might misuse, because of the ease of access. Long-term exposure in the workplace has been linked to a range of health issues, including dementia. So somebody who works with these types of chemicals in their workplace day in for their whole career, they could start to have some cognitive deficits. They have depressant effects, but also minor hallucinogenic effects. So when a solvent is inhaled, it enters the brain very quickly, so 8 to 15 seconds, and feeling of relaxation and warmth, and this usually lasts for several hours. So the initial effects are usually lightheaded, exhilaration, fantasy images, excitation, but then you can also feel nausea, increased salivation, sneezing, coughing because you are inhaling it, loss of coordination, depressed reflexes, sensitivity to light, skin irritation, so especially if you're inhaling it around your mouth and in your nose, there can be burns. Some users feel invincible, leading to reckless, dangerous, and violent behavior. So a chronic inhalant user, so they could have many different bodily issues, so everything from the cardiovascular to pulmonary, renal, hepatic systems, cancer. Adolescence, so because the brain is still maturing and actually continues to mature into your 20s, solvent use can negatively impact the brain and its maturation. Death can either be by chronic use or acute use, so it could happen with one episode of using an inhalant. So one example might be sudden sniffing death which is SSD, so all of a sudden your heart just stops, and this can happen at any age. Or you can also suffocate from using an inhalant, because technically you're breathing in a chemical as opposed to oxygen, so you can suffocate if you're not getting oxygen. So GHB, this can cause unconsciousness when added to alcohol, so amnesia, nausea, vomiting, confusion, seizures, and this can lead to death as well. So some long-term effects, so people who use these types of substances over long-term, there can be physical and psychological dependence. You can damage your nerves, liver, and kidneys, could lead to infertility, and neurological damage and cognitive deficits, so actual brain damage. Some brain damage can be reversed if you stop using these substances, but some of it is very permanent and will not change. Tolerance, so regular use will require higher doses to produce the same effects. Regular users, they can become feeling depressed, lose interest, diminish motivation, serious neurological changes, so actual brain changes, personality changes. Withdrawal symptoms, so you can have withdrawal symptoms from not using these substances. So here's a list of some types of substances, so some very common ones. So these are things like all of these substances you can buy at most local stores. It's pretty easy to buy most of these things, and these are all the types of chemicals that are in it and the classes that they belong to. So this website, I'd like you to take a look at it. So you can pause this and go into and look at it. It's a drug-free world, a foundation for a drug-free world. It's specific to inhalants, but the website is actually a wealth of information regarding other drugs and other substances that are out there. So you can take a look around the website for other information, and it will give you some information maybe for assignments or projects you might need to do. So I'm going to pause it here, and I'm going to move to alcohol in the next voiceover that I'll be doing. So I'm going to pause it here, and you can start fresh with me on the next one.